I'd like you to think of the main character in your favorite movie or book. Think of the way they act. Think of the way they overcome obstacles. Think of the way the director or author focuses on their strengths on their greatest days, but also their weaknesses on their worst days as they progress through the traditional hero's journey. The protagonists of movies and books are genuine and authentic in a way that allows us, as the reader and audience, to get to know them so deeply in under 2 hours or 200 pages. Now, I'd like you to think of the last tough moment in your life, when you really thought about giving up and could only focus on all of your weaknesses and failures. For some of you, this may be hard to recall, but how did you act? How did you overcome the impossible? Did you fully embrace the challenge, or just wait for the challenge to pass? If you are struggling to answer these questions, I want you to ask yourself this. Do you believe you are being the main character of your own life? You may ask, what does it mean to be the main character, and how can you be the main character of your own life? To best answer this, look at your favorite protagonists. Being the main character means making the active choice to be your authentic self. It does not mean being defined by others' views of you or being shaped by the experiences that you have no control over. It means being open to learn your innermost desires and how you handle hard things, such as being alone, experiencing heartbreak, or experiencing the death of a loved one. It is about trying to learn who you really are and the motivations behind what drive your passions. Now, I may have you convinced, and you might be thinking, okay, I want to be the main character. But how do I do it? I'd like to share with you how I came to understand this in my own life. Most of the ideas from this talk stem from one pivotal experience in my life where I learned I had to become the main character. Growing up, I often only thought of myself as the girl whose sister has cancer. When I was 10 years old, my mom sat me and my 13-year-old brother, Alfonso, down one day to tell us that our sister, Josie, who was only 16 at the time, had cancer. But unlike other relatives who passed away from cancer, that she was going to be okay. My sister was my best friend, and I didn't understand how she could have cancer. I used to think to myself, she probably doesn't have the same cancer that everyone else has, right? Over the next 5 years, Josie fought against her illness, and we were by her side the entire time. And over those 5 years, she became the main character of my life. Not because she stole the spotlight or required much attention, but because I didn't think anything in this world was more important than my sister winning her fight. My sister Josie was courageous, and she cared about me and my brother's happiness more than anything else. We spent countless nights having sleepovers in hospital rooms, creating friendships with Josie's nurses, and even celebrating birthdays and Christmas within 4 hospital walls. My parents worked their hardest to create a little bit of normal in our unique situation. When Josie was 21, she passed away, and our little bit of normal crumbled down to the ground. Now you may ask, what happens when you lose the main character in your story? Well, the story usually ends. But for me, it was actually just the beginning. I wish I could talk to my 15-year-old self now and tell her that it was completely normal to feel out of control when navigating uncharted emotions like the loss of a sister and best friend. At 15, I had to figure out how to be the lead character despite their turmoil, and without the help of my big sister. I coped through the loss of my sister by trying to figure out who I am, what I am passionate about, and who I wanted to be. I remember the feeling of numbness in the first few months following my sister's death. I found myself waiting for the moment it would all click, and I would finally realize that my sister is not coming back. But in waiting, I gradually felt myself becoming more and more numb to my surroundings, and becoming less and less passionate in what used to really engage me. I didn't want to see my friends, I closed myself off, and I was unsure when or if I would ever stop feeling this way. Ultimately, like many protagonists in books and movies, I was faced with two paths, and the choice to decide which I wanted to head down. The safer route, where I felt sorry for myself and my experiences, and would ultimately make sure that I never felt that same emptiness again. Or the other, where I decided to live a life where I could grow and thrive. In the end, I realized that I am the main character, and it was time I started to act like one, even if my life did not follow the traditional trajectory of a hero's journey. Not immediately, but over time, I allowed myself to feel the emotions of my sister's death, so I could slowly learn how to rediscover my passions again. I started to make decisions that aimed at appreciating every opportunity so I could grow and learn rather than running from change. I put my whole heart into my schoolwork and after-school activities. I even applied to a university in the United States to study biology, despite living just outside of Toronto, Canada, my entire life. I also got involved with and started initiatives for cancer patients. Here I am now, not perfect or healed, but working on who I want to be despite the challenges that tried, but ultimately could not define me. Something I didn't realize immediately, but understand now, is this concept from Brian Tracy, an American-Canadian motivational speaker who once said, "You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control your attitude towards what happens to you." Being the main character means changing your attitude and finding what drives you beyond your obstacles. This drive is commonly referred to as intrinsic motivation, the reasons behind our motivation and why we choose to do what we do. Scientists have discovered that intrinsic motivation focuses on the want to feel satisfied, interested, and joyful. The hope is we do the things we love through our intrinsic motivation, contrary to extrinsic motivation, which focuses much more on the achievements or rewards that come from an activity. So what's your intrinsic motivation? What drives you to be the hero of your story? Deciding to be the protagonist can happen at any moment in your life. It doesn't always have to be when you lose someone you love. It can happen when you get injured or lose a romantic relationship or friendship. It can happen when changing majors or careers, or when going through a pandemic and trying to figure out who you really are when you're not with anybody else. But it can also happen without a big, tragic, or life-altering event, when we realize that our actions do not align with the life we aim to live. Everybody has an identity that defines them and completes their narrative. Life is just about finding, refining, and shaping that very identity. It is easy to mindlessly live through each day without actively experiencing the highs and the lows. This can leave us feeling like we are stuck in a routine, tired and lacking purpose. But when we choose to experience each day by following our intrinsic motivations, we are actively choosing to create our narrative. If being the main character is supposed to bring us so much happiness and fulfillment, why do so many people not want to be the protagonists of their own life? Is it truly easier to sit back and watch your life as a bystander or a background character than to truly and authentically experience it? I think, similar to what I experienced, in not being the protagonist, I was able to play it safe, avoiding what I could not control. We become comfortable in this inaction, rather than doing what it will take to cause change in our own life. However, this inhibits our ability to grow as an individual. In finding that sweet spot between the extremes, we are able to flourish. This is why I challenge you to find this growth through becoming the protagonist of your life. The average person's hero's journey does not follow the textbook standard rising action, climax, and resolution that we are all so familiar with. Our lives are much more complex and are an ongoing journey, unlike those from books and movies. So whether it be through a new hobby, exercise, journaling, or just talking to others, it is important that you find what being the main character means to you. In finding the motivation to overcome challenges, we are able to work through the discomforts and foster growth. In choosing to be the main character of your life, you are choosing to support others in finding the best versions of themselves. The best way to be there for your friends and family is to also be there for yourself. There's enough space for all of us to be our best version of the main character. You deserve to be the protagonist in your life, and I believe you have what it takes. Hopefully, in finding what being the main character means to you, you'll find yourself right at the beginning of a new chapter, rather than at the end of your story. Thank you.